Welcome to the Foundry by Forge College. Let's just jump right in, because I am incredibly excited about today's explainer. If you've been tracking with us, you know we've just accomplished something absolutely major. We finalized our deployment checklist. It's got all of our pre-deployment verification steps, the go/no-go criteria, and the post-deployment monitoring items all neatly laid out. But, having a checklist is really only half the battle. Now we're facing the ultimate operational question. Where do we actually execute all of these checks without accidentally draining our wallets? To help us figure that out, we'll quickly cover 6 blueprints today. Moving to deployment, defining the environments, the test track metaphor, selection criteria, your decision heuristic, and we'll wrap up with summary and next steps. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, moving to the deployment phase. This is where theory finally hits reality. Getting that deployment checklist mapped out is a genuinely great feeling. But right now, we are standing at a critical crossroad. Where are you going to run your verification? We absolutely need a place to test our code, push it to its very limits, and find the breaking points. But we have to do it without causing a catastrophic, real-world financial pileup. Making ad hoc, on-the-fly choices here? Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. So, Section 2, defining environments. Let's look at Mainnet versus Devnet. Before we can even think about routing decisions, we have to clearly define the technical specs of our 2 primary clusters. First up is Mainnet. This is the real deal. Mainnet is the live cluster. This is the place where your transactions carry actual, real-world economic value, denominated in lamports, which are just fractions of a SOL token. On Mainnet, state changes persist indefinitely. If your upgrade has a bug, those irreversible state changes are permanent. Nodes are validating transactions under standard consensus, meaning real fees are paid and actual money is on the line. It is high stakes all the time. Now, contrast that immediately with Devnet. Devnet is basically your ultimate sandbox. Instead of going out and buying tokens, faucets just issue them to you for completely free. Oh, did you totally mess up the historical state? No problem at all. It's easily resettable by the network maintainers. On Devnet, you can safely run the absolute most unhinged, destructive stress tests you can possibly imagine. It's like letting a toddler loose in a Lego store, and you can do it all without ever risking a single cent of user funds. Moving to Section 3, the test track metaphor, closed track versus open road. Now, those technical definitions are great, but a concrete metaphor locks this in perfectly. Think of Devnet as a closed test track. You control everything. You can pause the traffic, and intentionally crashing a test dummy into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour is perfectly fine. Encouraged even. But Mainnet is the open road. It's a live, multi-lane highway. The traffic is real, the consequences are real, and an untested, faulty migration here doesn't just hit a wall. It causes a massive, multi-car pileup involving real people's assets. You have to move cautiously. And keep this phrase in the back of your mind. On the open road, every action has an explicit toll. Because you're using free, infinite tokens on Devnet, you completely lack meaningful cost telemetry. You genuinely have no idea what the real toll is. Crossing over from the track to Mainnet requires strict, non-negotiable protections. We're talking monitored canary releases and formal security audits before you ever let anyone drive at full speed. All right, Section 4, selection criteria. How we actually balance the trade-offs. Let's break down the mechanics of splitting our deployment checklist because, honestly, it's rarely just a simple binary choice. And looking at the specs brilliantly illustrates this. For economic value, Mainnet is real money, while Devnet relies purely on test tokens. For transaction costs, Mainnet demands actual fees. Devnet is free. The stability required and the risk of harm are massive on Mainnet, but essentially non-existent over on Devnet. Therefore, production traffic and real user launches strictly belong on Mainnet, while your CI/CD pipelines, your smoke tests, and your development builds securely live on Devnet. Digging just a layer deeper, there are 5 key attributes you always have to evaluate against: reliability of results, cost and resource limits, security and adversarial testing, speed of iteration, and finally, regulatory and compliance checks. In our learning programs at Forge College, we constantly emphasize a fundamental truth. While your developer productivity relies entirely on Devnet, ensuring accurate behavior, like real fee interactions and strict regulatory checks, absolutely demands a Mainnet representative environment. Which brings us right into a massive pitfall I want to warn you about. It's called the Devnet Mirage. Please do not rely solely on DevNet for fee measurements or throughput assumptions. Because there's practically zero real competition for block space on the test track, DevNet is going to drastically underreport your costs and wildly overestimate your throughput. If you trust that mirage, you'll push your code to Mainnet and immediately hit dangerous account exhausting bugs that were completely invisible during testing. Let's move to Section 5 and see how this builds into your decision heuristic, creating a reproducible rule set. So, how do we apply these concepts so your engineering team isn't just guessing when under pressure? Here's your chief engineer's heuristic, your ultimate tool for mapping this out. Step 1. Does the check involve economic invariance like gas, rent, or real-world fees? If yes, use a mainnet-like staging environment. Step 2. Does it involve destructive testing or rapid iteration? Keep it on DevNet. Step 3. What if it requires both? Then you run parallel gates with crystal clear acceptance criteria for each. You always want to map your checklist items to these environmental properties, rather than mapping them to what is merely convenient at the time. And that brings us to Section 6, Summary and Next Steps. To bring it all together, DevNet is your closed test track. It's for high-speed iteration where you break things on purpose. Mainnet is the open road for cautious, real economy, staged releases. So the crucial point I want you to remember is this. Always include at least one production representative gate before your final go/no-go decision. You never, ever want to discover critical cost or behavioral bugs while you're live under actual traffic. Remember, that is exactly how those multi-car pileups happen. I'm going to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought as you review your own workflows today. Are your deployment decisions currently based on what's convenient, or are they rooted in concrete environmental properties? Think about that as we gear up for our next topic, where we'll translate these exact heuristics into choosing the absolute right network for your specific stages. Until then, I highly encourage you to head over to forge.college to learn more about the subject, dive into our Web3 engineering materials, and keep sharpening your skills. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.